In the era of the creation of the novel Frankenstein, Europe was moving away from a world that was dominated by religious faith and superstition to one that was more involved in experimental scientific research and logical deductive reasoning. Romanticism valued ideas such as personal and emotional compassion. Shelley questioned the 18th century scientific rationalist optimism about the knowledge of creation as being purely good. The scientific and practical attempts of improvement on nature were shown as Shelley writes in Frankenstein. Learn from me, if not by my perceptions, at least by my example. How dangerous is the acquirement of knowledge, and how much happier that man is who believes his native town to be the world than he who aspires to become greater than his nature will allow. However, Blade Runner is juxtaposed against the era of Frankenstein. This is because Blade Runner is strongly based on the environmental focuses which people did not completely recognize. Consumerism, materialism, and greed of the rich were rampant, and people purposely flaunted their wealth and exploited the environment as social values were fundamentally ignored, along with morals being additionally challenged. In Blade Runner, man had not only silenced the Earth, but had also conquered it completely. Microsoft had begun to control businesses, globalization was starting to occur, great economic prosperity and opportunity created under the Reagan administration, and a greater inequality in society between rich corporations and poor working class was established greater. Ridley Scott illustrates the disastrous effects of man interferences in nature, all because we failed to heed Shelley's warning almost 200 years earlier. Frankenstein is a Gothic novel which was the only one that had been completed that has become one of the most famous Gothic novels in history. Mary Shelley uses a narrative device of a ship's captain, Captain Walton, who is retelling an account through epistemology. He had also challenged the frontiers of human knowledge and had suffered for the discoveries in order to pioneer a new way. Shelley also uses the narrative voices from the perspectives of Victor Frankenstein and the creation. As Frankenstein is a novel, this affects the meaning on how the audience perceives the context and purpose. As it is a Gothic science fiction novel, it also indirectly makes us use our imagination throughout due to the language used to convey its ideas. Blade Runner is similar to Frankenstein as it uses the Gothic genre to convey its values and ideas to its proposed audience. The genre is entwined as intertextuality, including film noir, Gothic horror, science fiction, and romance. Blade Runner also uses cinematic techniques of film noir as a dystopia. This technique tends to distance the audience from the characters and thus distancing us from the actions they perform. As Blade Runner is a film, it can directly toy with our imagination to convey its concepts of ideas as it visually shows us each perception. This affects the way that the audience distinguishes the meaning that Ridley Scott was trying to convey in this film as a more graphic horror film. Frankenstein has many key concerns, issues, themes, values, and ideas throughout the novel, which compare and contrast with that of Blade Runner. Altruism is a key feature shown in Frankenstein, which is similar to Blade Runner in terms of the replicants. Frankenstein's creation undertakes many initial acts of kindness to humans, such as cutting wood for Felix's family and saving a young girl from drowning. Shelley demonstrates the contrast of mankind's ability for civility and peace with its capacity for heartless barbarity. What chiefly struck me was the gentle manners of these people. I remembered too well the treatment I had suffered the night before from the barbarous villagers. The creature expresses the use of altruism of what he thinks about Felix and his family. He has grown to almost love them, and then gets rejected by them, which is similar to the replicants in society in Blade Runner. Loneliness and isolation is a characteristic that is expressed in Frankenstein, which is similar to how the replicants feel in Blade Runner. The relationship between Victor Frankenstein and his creation shows loneliness and isolation in its truest form. Believe me, Frankenstein, I was benevolent. My soul glowed with love and humanity. But am I not alone? Miserably alone? The creature knows he has no real purpose in life, and isolation is the only thing he's going to have. Whereas Frankenstein feels, how mutable are our feelings, and how strange is this clinging love we have of life, even in the excess of misery. As he knows, life has its ups and downs. Blade Runner also shows some key issues, themes, values, and ideas. A major concern within the film is the diminished humanity displayed by human characters juxtaposed to how the replicants appear to have a genuine companionship, empathy, morality, civility, and compassion. As the movie progresses, people appear more diminished with less freedom, autonomy, or choice. This is shown through dispirited masses of disparity between rich and poor and the lack of civility. Brutalized torture and weakened deprivation have been subjected to dispirited masses. The settings are always bleak and gloomy, no natural light, and always seem misty. Even the brightest spirits become demoralized in this type of atmosphere. Within this, it shows the growing gap between the rich and poor, which shows the disparity between them. The powerful and the powerless are symbolized in Blade Runner through how many stories above ground they live. In contrast, Tyrell lives 700 stories above ground level, where J.F. Sebastian lives on the 15th floor in an empty, ruined apartment. However, most appear to live on the street. Bureaucracy through bullying and intimidation gets so overpowering that it kills the human spirit, disempowering its victims. This also leads into other factors such as isolation, which results in a lack of people skills and loss of empathy. This disconnects them further and alienates them from society, which is how the replicants feel living life as a slave. The lack of civility is a common theme throughout both texts, as the replicants appear to be loving, courteous, and respectful of one another, which shows how they care about each other, whereas Brian speaks in a confrontational manner. This is shown when he says, "You become a little person," to Deckard, indicating his abusive threats towards him. Nature is the key theme, idea, and value within both Frankenstein and Blade Runner. However, they both compare and contrast within this idea and value. In Frankenstein, Shelley tries to perceive the value of our natural corporeal of humanity and rejects the scientific notation. To convince us the rational thought will lead us to move humane society and that humanity may become diminished, she says this with, "My health and spirits had long been restored, and they gained additional strength from the salubrious air I breathed." Blade Runner also tries to show this through the changing in power between the creator and the creation. However, it also tries to perceive science and nature as a good thing, as you can create something exactly how you want it. Which leads us to the question of, who was the real villain?